Welcome to Kimsey Software's MetalTrax training series. This is video 1, setting up MetalTrax. Branches, warehouses, users, and sales reps by Kyle Kimsey.
This is the first video in the MetalTrax training series, setting up MetalTrax. The only thing I've done in this instance to prepare that you may not have in your data set is your GL accounts. Make sure that you have sent us your GL accounts or that you've asked to use ours before you do this setup process, or you won't be able to go through even the first couple steps. So what's going to happen after the Kimsey software technicians load or help you load the MetalTrax on your workstation, you're going to have a little icon that looks like this. When you click on it, your user ID may pull in, but this is just from your computer. That doesn't mean it has that user set up in MetalTrax. So to begin with, we're going to type in the word supervisor with no password and click on OK. Now the next step is to show you this is our system. Every one of these modules up on top is a main module, is a main module. General ledger, accounts receivable, accounts payable, inventory, purchases, sales, production, and miscellaneous. Now you notice as I click on each one of these modules, they have submodules: processing, master files, and then they'll have different modules like setup and other modules. So see, inventory control, processing, master files, reports, and miscellaneous. So what we're going to do is we're going to concentrate on setting it up, and then we'll cover these other modules later throughout the different training sessions. I'm going to get into miscellaneous, and we're going to go over and we're going to set up our branches. That's the very first step. Now these icons right here at the top are the save, the new, the edit, the delete, the cancel, and the lookup. In this case, I'm just going to type in main. We're assuming for this training that you only have one branch. If you set up one branch and clicked on new, you could set up the other branch. In this case, I'm going to edit, so I'm going to click on E to edit, or I could do the Control E to edit. Branch name, I'm going to come down, and my branch name in this case is Kimsey Metal Products. Kimsey Metal Products. I type in my name and the address. And right here, I'm going to put it's in St. George, Utah, and put in the zip code. Obviously, if I don't have a fourth line for the address, I can just take that out. I'm going to put in my telephone number, hit tab, and type in my telephone number and my fax. At this point, I can put in my website URL. And I'm going to leave this unchecked. We probably will not have received your logo yet, but if you haven't given us your logo, give it to us, and we'll convert your logo to the correct BMP format, and then you could access it here and look up and put the correct logo to appear on your forms. For training purposes, I'm going to leave this off, and we're going to save it. Now you notice I just came up and clicked on the Save button, and I can also, to close the window, just highlight the X in the right-hand corner and close it. The next step is setting up a warehouse. Because the system comes already configured with a main warehouse, and if you have other additional warehouses to set up, you can at this time. But I'm just going to type in the word main, and I'm going to edit it. Again, the lookup description is going to be Kimsey Metal Products, and the company name is also Kimsey Metal Products. Again, for the lookup, you may just want to say lookup description is Kimsey's. And if you have different warehouses, they'd of course have your different names. In this case, I'll put in my address. Now you notice at this point it prompts for a tax code. This is why I've told you to actually bring in the GL accounts beforehand, because it's going to be asking you for your different like tax codes, sales reps, and other things. And in this case, my tax codes are tied to a GL account. So in your case, you're going to have it look like this. It's going to have no tax code. So at this point, we go over to the monetary, and we go to sales tax codes, and I'm going to click on new, and I'm going to put in NT for non-taxable. At that point, because I'm basically saying that my warehouse, if somebody comes into my warehouse, they're going to be non-taxable. But if you wanted to set up another tax codes or multiple tax codes, or have us bring in your tax codes, we can do that as well. So I'm going to say 0%. Now on my GL account, if you do not know your GL account codes, simply do a lookup. Now you notice as I highlight the binoculars, I can do an F2, a Control F, or the binoculars. At this point, I'm looking for a sales tax payable, so I just start typing in sales tax, and you notice it jumps right down to my sales tax payable, my account 3160, and I can save it. That allows me, at this point, I can put in lots of other tax codes, but for training purposes, I'm just going to do one. Now, as I close that screen down, we're back on the warehouse maintenance screen, and I would say NT for non-taxable. At this point, we're going to leave the system to be non-unique. Now, this is a discussion we'll have later on, whether you're non-unique or you're unique tagging or whether you're homogeneous. For right now, just leave it as a default, and you can put in your next tag number. If you're not going to be tagged, you can just leave it at 1,000 or 5,000. I'm going to say my next tag number is going to be 50,000. Same with my non-unique. Next shipper number, you can put anything in there for the time being. That does not matter right now. If you want to set up your warehouse locations, these warehouse locations would be bin locations in the warehouse. So maybe I want A1 to be a location. I could type in A1 or A-1 if I wanted an A-1. Hit the save. Then I could do a B-1 and so on. Those would be bin locations in your warehouses. And I'll just set up a few of them now and hit the save button. As I close that down, my warehouse is now set up. I hit the save button and close the window. At this point, we're now going to set up a user. As I click on users, you notice at this point, again, it's prompting for the branch. The branch is already out there, so I can type in main. But if I did that, it's more like if I'm looking up a user. In this case, I don't have any users. So if I did a lookup, I'm only going to find my supervisor. So what we're going to show you is how to add new user. To add a new user, let's say I'm adding a new user, Jen. I could say N for new, click on N for new, type in my main for my branch, type in Jen. You could do Jen, and if her last name was Johnson, you may do Jen J, or the user ID could be Jen, or whatever you wanted the user ID, even a number. In this case, I'm going to say Jen Johnson. Jen Johnson is the user, and I can give her a password. At this point, you may not want to give a password until they've given you their passwords, but if you know it, you can do a password. Now, the next, let's say Jen is a sales rep. Again, you get to this point, you're like, I don't have a sales rep ID. We're going to leave this screen open, and we're going to go over and set up 2 sales rep IDs. Now, sales reps are the one thing that are set up under accounts receivable. So I can stay in the screen, click on accounts receivable, click on sales reps, and now in this case, I'm going to say new sales rep, JJ, Jen Johnson. It asks whether she's an inside, an outside, or both. In this case, Jen happens to be both. So I'm going to say she's both, and I'm going to save. I'm also going to set up a new sales rep, and let's say for this time, it's Tim. So I type in T, and the last name is Holman. So H for Holman. You can type in his name, Tim Holman. And Tim is an inside sales rep, and save. Now when I close that down, now I can show you, I'm going to set up Jen and Tim. The default sales rep for Jen is JJ. At this point, I'm not going to worry about any of these other instances because for setup purposes, I just need to put in the default sales rep. That's going to be what, when they get into the sales order, that's going to be the initials that automatically default. At this point, I'm going to click on Set Menu Options. Here's how Set Menu Options work. It defaults to everything off. You notice the first menu is General Ledger. It goes from left to right. General Ledger, Accounts Receivable, Payable, Inventory, and so on. As I scroll through the screen, you notice the first one is General Ledger. The next one, Offset, is going to be Accounts Receivable, and so on. Now, in this case, Jen is a sales rep, so I'm going to say I could disable all options or enable. I'm going to enable all options, but in this case, I'm going to turn off the General Ledger by clicking on it. Notice I just clicked on it. Now, if I wanted to leave the General Ledger on, but only turn off processing or one of the other menus, I just click underneath that menu and turn it off. But for this instance, I'm going to turn off all of the General Ledger. I'm then going to scroll down and say because she's a sales rep, she's not going to need any accounts receivable processing, But she might need customers. So I'm going to click down here and maybe turn off whatever needs to be turned off. And maybe she doesn't need any reports. And leave on what we need to leave on. If she's only going to have view access for customers, I could click on that and hit the space bar and make her view access. In this case, I'm going to give her all access. For vendors, let's say she doesn't need access to anything in the accounts payable but the vendor screen. Now, if I were to turn off the complete accounts payable, I couldn't even get down here to the vendors. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on the accounts payable, turn off the processing, and leave the vendors on and turn everything else off. At this point, the next one I scroll down to is inventory. Let's say she needs access to everything in inventory except down at the inventory, maybe she doesn't need any access to physical inventory. Hopefully this will let you see how you turn things off and on. We're going to leave her access to purchases, and we're going to leave her access to sales orders for the time being. At that point, I'm going to save, and Jen is now done, and she's saved. Now we're going to do one more. I'm going to click on the new, and in this case, I'm going to say branch, and it's going to be Tim H for Tim Holman. In this case, Tim is going to have the sales rep TH, but for set menu options, we could go through the same procedure, but in this case, instead, I'm actually going to copy options from another user, and I'm going to copy it from Jen. At this point, I save, and then I hit the save button, and I'm done. Now, if we click back on miscellaneous, you'll notice we've set up branches, warehouses, and users. That's the end of Setup Section 1, and stay tuned and look for our other videos, and we'll go through the different setup processes and each one of the modules in subsequent training videos. Thank you very much.